It is time to get to work. So as you know, during our retreats and summits, we have 3.5 days together, and we spend a good portion of day one on mindset, heart, things that are designed to evoke some emotion, to get you excited about what we can accomplish. And we're going to do a little bit more of that this afternoon, but because we're seeing some big changes as it relates to the way we work, both sellers and buyers, this particular agenda has probably a little bit more meat on the buyer side material than we've had at any one of our events, because you know as well as I do, we are always listing first. And so because of that, it forced me to get into content right away in terms of tactics the first morning, the second session, I guess you'll say, of the first day. And we usually don't do that. It usually takes a good 2-3 sessions before I start getting into some tactics. So this particular talk that I put together was based on when I reflect and think about what's going on in the industry right now and what it's going to take some serious market share. And I mean when I say, I know it sounds like a motivational line or something that because we're at an event, it's just like a cliche, take market share. But when I say that, I actually mean it. I actually believe, and first of all, I've done it in 2008 and 2009, when the market was doing this, my business was doing this. Later this week, you're going to get the opportunity to meet the very first real estate coach I ever hired. And you're going to hear some of the things that we talked about to get me to do this while our market was doing this. And I can say with 1,000% certainty, during the years of 8, 9, 10, 11, when the market was doing this, I was taking serious market share. And so I wrote out a list of skills that I believe real estate agents need to win right now. Now, for those of you that have been on the webinars or the half-day sessions, you might remember I talked a lot about, hey, here's the 5 skills. And I do that for the general population, if you will. Meaning I make it very easy to understand if you do these if you get good in these 5 areas, you're going to be just fine. Well, the simplicity of those talks are based around the fact that the audience for a lot of those talks are hearing me for the first time. So I have to keep some things fundamental. I have to keep some things somewhat elementary. For you guys, because you invested the time, the energy, the money to get here, chances are you've already heard the foundational fundamentals. And so I really had to dig deep and think about, okay, what is it that we're doing to win right now? Like when I think about even in the month of May and June, as a team, the Glover Agency had its best 2 months in probably the last 3 years in the months of May and June. And so what I do for anything that takes place on this stage is I take a look at where our business is coming from. That's where all of our talks stem from. Everything goes back to where does our business come from? Where do our listings come from? Where do our buyers come from? How do we get offers accepted? How do we get listings sold? And I look at the listings and sales boards and I make notes. I look for consistencies. I look for things that I'm seeing trending. Like, interesting, this June we did way more of this than we did last June. I'm wondering if this is actually finally kicking in and working. And so between now and the end of the retreat, you're going to hear several of those different tactics and sources of business and ways to get more business from those sources. Many of the sources you're already familiar with, we've taught them, but we're teaching them at a deeper level during our time together this week. Before we dig into the specific sources of where to get more listings, where to get more buyers, we have to get real. We have to get real with ourselves on these 25 skills to take serious market share. Now, when I say the number 25, in fact, when I wrote these down, I was thinking to myself, I used a black Sharpie to put the numbers by them. I was thinking, wow, this is probably going to overwhelm the audience. And I thought, that's probably why I normally do 5 or 7 or 9 or 3. Because if I give you 3 or 5, you walk out of here thinking that's easy, I can go do that. But if I give you 25, you walk out of here thinking, wow, that's a lot. I'm going to have to get good at all 25 of those. The answer is no. You don't have to get good at all 25 of these unless you want to actually see what your full potential is. Now, you could take 7, 9, 11, 3, 2, 24 of them, or all 25. But here's what I know. If you get good in these 25 areas, and it just so happens to be, by the way, after I wrote these out, I made sure that our content, are we going to answer that for them? Yep, check. Are we going to cover that? Yep, that's on day 3. Are we going to show them how to do that? Yep, that's the first panel. Are we going to show them how to get better at this? Yep, that's the 3rd interview of the week. Every single one of these 25. And I want you to fact check me on this. I want you to go back Thursday at 12:30. I want you to look at this list, and honestly, you'll see that every single one of these skills we gave you a plan for, or we gave you a strategy for. And so what I want you to do right now is turn to a clean sheet of paper in your workbook, please, for the first time. I hear there's like bingo going on in the audience with some of the stupid things I say. 25 skills. And I'll do my best to give you examples of each. And I actually have some of the stuff as I'm going through these, and it might take a couple sessions. Some of the stuff I have tactics to share with you right now. But if I know I have a panelist, for instance, talking about number 5, I'm not going to give you anything on number 5 because we're going to hear it from someone who's winning at number 5, maybe even better than we are. Every single one of these 25, you're going to have a plan, you're going to have a playbook on every single one of these when we're done here Thursday at 12:30. So let's start with number 1. If we want to win in the market that we're heading into, because remember, we're in the middle of a little bit of a market shift, which is something that is not new. I mean, it seems, honestly, can anyone remember the last time the market was not shifting? I mean, literally everyone, email after email, Facebook post, event after event, the market's shifting. When is it not shifting? Like, seriously, can anyone remember the last time it wasn't shifting? I can't even remember that. But here's what I do know for sure. Whether you believe it's shifting or not, or whether it's shifting in your market or not, that doesn't matter. We determine our own market. You just heard the ism again. What we do know is shifting is our industry. And so when I take into consideration the shift that's happening in the industry, and I focus with a ton of intensity on what we need to do to win, these 25 skills will be what's required to win big with the changes. So let's start with number 1. And these are in no particular order, by the way. Number 1, under 25 skills to win with the changes coming. The skill of improving our image. The skill of improving our image. It's actually a skill. Think about it for a second. Well, Jeff, how is that a skill? Well, let me ask you a question. When's the last time you did an audit of your social media? When's the last time you took an inventory of all of the crap you have driving around with you in your car? Jeff, I go to the car wash every Monday morning on my way to the office. What are you talking about? I saw those Taco Bell wrappers in your back seat. Come on now. You know the buyers are peeking in your back seat when you're out showing them houses. Think about it for a second. Your car, the way you carry yourself, your image, it's all part of who you are. And what's happening is, as more and more consumers, you might be wondering, Jeff, why is this one important? As more and more consumers are spending time on social media, and more consumers are buying into what's happening on social media, more and more consumers are judging the way you carry yourself. The way you carry yourself is your image. Audit your social media. Heck, audit your circle. Audit the people that you're spending time with. All of that will help you improve your image. That's a skill. Number 2. And by the way, I want you to, as I'm going through each of these, I want you to write a question. This is what I did for myself when I put our plans and things that we're going to share over the next 3.5 days. I wrote this question down, and I want you to write this down under each one. So I'm sorry if you wrote down number 2. Scribble that out. Write down this question underneath number 1. And then you're going to write down number 2. Just write down this question. How can I? How can I? how can I? As I'm going through each of these, I want you to think about and reflect before I get to the next one, because usually I have a small explanation for each. I want you to immediately go to, because this is what I do, I want you immediately to go to, how can I improve my image? How can I do that? What could I change? So I want you to think about, I have it written down right here, how can I? Every single time I give you a point during this session and the next session, I want you to write down underneath it, how can I? And by Thursday at 12:30, my hope is that you're going to have 2 or 3 things written next to that. Because you're going to be hearing, not just from myself, but other qualified people on how you can get better at each one of these skills. Let's go to number 2. And this is the one I usually lose half the room. Number 2, the skill of improving my sales ability. The skill of improving my sales ability. Well, Jeff, it's 2024. Hello, we have Chat GPT. I got this AI working for me. I got this writing things for me. I got a virtual assistant doing this for me. Get better at what's the sales skills? What are you talking about? That sounds like 3, 2, 1. Sales skills. We're still talking about sales skills? Yes. It's never going to go away. Well, I take that back. The day we stop doing listing presentations and buyer consultations all together are the day that we won't need sales skills. Because even if we don't do them in person and we end up doing virtually or whatever, we're still going to need the sales skills. Because why? Because people make a decision on who they're going to hire based on how you make them feel. So the front half of the room understands how people make decisions. Back half of the room, people make decisions based on how we feel. So how do we make someone feel a certain way? Based on what comes out of here. I mean, you could say pretty much anything to someone close to you and they'll feel a certain way, but they'll get over it quickly. Oh, that's just that's just Jeff being Jeff. But when you say something to someone you don't know, they hang on to it. They think about it. It resonates with them positively or negatively. Well, how do I get good at sales then, Jeff? You understand the logic behind each question you're asking them in the script. You go find someone to hold you accountable to writing, chanting, and role-playing. No different than when I started. And I told my first broker, I don't think I'm going to make this. Do you know, I don't think I'm going to make it in this business. 40 days in, I almost got out of the business. Honestly, I had a little business card in my pocket that was Art Van Furniture, which is where I sold furniture. And on the back side of that card, it had all of my expenses. Rent, car payment, whatever little expenses I had at the time at 18 years old. And I was 6 months into the business without a commission check. I mean, I was probably 3 months before I even had a contract. And so at that point, my broker, Tim Riley, said, Jeff, if you're going to make it in this business, you have to sound like you've been doing it a long time. So, well, that's great. That sounds good. I mean, how do I sound like I've been doing this a long time? I said, oh, it's easy. You just got to master what you say. Tim was his name. I said, Tim, I'm 18 years old. I look like I'm 14. All right. I'm renting an apartment. I'm driving my Pontiac Silver Grand Am, the same one I had in high school. And my business card still has my senior pick on it. How do I sound like I've been doing this a long time? I'll never forget, he pulled out a book of scripts from his bottom drawer, laid it out on the desk. He started fanning the pages. He said, Jeff, there are 6 different sets of scripts in here. These are from all the trainers. This was 2003. So these were like legitimate trainers. Like there were only 6 of them. Now today, thanks to social media, there's 6 million and there's not even 1.2 million realtors. I don't know how we have 6 million coaches today. Most of which don't sell any real estate, as you know. So he fanned the pages. He said, Jeff, I want you to identify with the scripts in this book, and I want you to pick a couple that you feel comfortable with. I said, okay, how do I know which ones to pick? He said, well, let me ask you a question. Do you want to be a listing agent or do you want to be a buyer's agent? I said, well, what's the difference? He said, well, it's no difference than employee and employer. Okay, what does that mean? He said, well, the employers work their butts off Monday through Friday from 7:15, 7:30 in the morning until 5, 6 o'clock at night, going out in the market, taking listing inventory and putting it on the shelves for all the employees to spend their nights, their weekends, their holidays, their otherwise would-be time with family out showing the inventory of all the employers. So based on that, which one would you rather be? I said, well, based on that, I want to be an employer. He said, okay, good. I'm declaring you a listing agent from this point forward. Okay. He said, so here's what I want you to do. Grab 2 prospecting scripts out of there. Many of you know the story. I grabbed the expired script and the for sale by owner script. I knew no different because I was also, again, 18 years old, and I wasn't going to get any business from my friends and family at that point. I was brand new. He said, you're going to work with complete strangers because there's 2 types of people in this world. People you know, people you don't know. Which group is bigger, Jeff? Obviously the group of people I don't know. He said, okay, that's what we're going to focus on. And so he made me pull out the expired and for sale by owner script, and he also made me pull out a listing presentation script. And I remember sitting at his desk, and the first one I looked at was Floyd Wickman's, which love Floyd. He was one of my first mentors ever. And it was pages long. I said, this thing is going to take forever. You want me to write, chant, and role play this thing? He said, well, you can try somebody else's. So I flipped the page, and then I looked at Mike Ferry's script. I said, this thing, the 2-minute listing presentation, I live in Detroit. People are not going to list with me after meeting me for 2 minutes. This isn't going to work. So I started flipping through and realizing that once I found one that worked with me and resonated with me, and I don't even remember who it was probably one of the last ones I looked at. I said, okay, I can work with this. This is a 2-page, 3-page listing presentation. I can work with this one. He said, okay, good. Then you're going to write it out once a day for 30 days. And when you're done with that, come back and see me. So I went out and wrote it out once a day for 30 days. I came back after 30 days. A bunch of yellow pads. I threw them on his desk. Tim, what's next? Now, Jeff, I want you to chant these aloud once a day for 30 days. Many of you have heard the story. And then after that, I role-played it once a day for 30 days. Why am I repeating this story? Because it's no different today. The same thing for our agents when they join us today. Same thing for our agents, new agents that we're coaching through Sales Rocket or getting into one-on-one coaching. If you want more people to say yes to you, they need to feel good about you. If your script isn't making the number of people you want to feel good about you, I suggest you try ours. That's number 2. Number 3. We must improve, number 3, the skill of connection through social media. The skill of connection through social media. Believe it or not, people, as you know, are spending more time on social media today than probably ever before. And you have an opportunity to connect with someone through social media. So what do I mean by connecting? What I mean by connecting is DMing or private messaging someone when you see something fascinating or you have something to say to them. Don't just like or, heart. Actually engage with them. Actually create a relationship with someone you've never even met by connecting with them through social media. I saw what you put up there a couple days ago. I just really want to tell you that was really cool. Or it did this for me. Or I thought of this. Or because of that post, I did this. No different than if you had to connect with somebody today. You would say that to them in person. As time goes on, our ability to connect with others through not only actually engaging with them, but by creating engaging content is going to be the new way we create connection. You're already seeing it take place. You've seen it take place over the last decade. You'll be hearing a bit about that one as we go on throughout the next few days. Skill number 4. Skill number 4. The skill of being an entertaining person. It's a tough one. The skill of being an entertaining person. Well, Jeff, that's not naturally me. Well, was a listing presentation naturally you when you first saw it? No. So why can't you learn to be more entertaining? By the way, I want you to pay attention to, you'll see over the next 3.5 days, there's a little bit of a theme between some of our panelists and some of the discussions. We're going to be putting a lot more emphasis on helping you become an entertaining person. Why? Because when you're entertaining, people will stop and engage. When you're boring, good, bad, right, or wrong, they're moving on. They're moving on until they see something that's entertaining. It's a skill. becoming entertaining. We'll be talking a lot about that this week. Skill number 5. You're going to need this one, especially if you go all in, as Justin said earlier on number 4. Because some of you are in this room and you're circling that one, you're starring it, you're saying, yes, I need to get better at that. How could I be more entertaining? You're going to need this one if you circled or starred that one. Skill number 5, the skill of getting over yourself quickly. The skill of getting over yourself quickly. Because it's going to be embarrassing. It's not going to work in your favor. It's not going to go your way. You're going to worry about what other people think. The skill of getting over yourself quickly. I mean, honestly, who cares? Who cares what other people think? I remember through the years I would get asked, like, does it bother you when, people hang up on you and, people cuss you out? Are you kidding me? I make a game out of it. Like, I work hard to be cussed out. I look forward to someone slamming the phone on my door or in my ear. Get over yourself. Number 6. Skills required after the change. The skill of writing good copy. We've talked a lot about that over the last couple of years for my 2, 3, 4, 5 event attendees. You know that. We've been talking about that at tour stops. The skill of writing great copy. Later in this week's one of the sessions, I'm going to give you some new copy. I'm going to teach you some new techniques because, by the way, I think of writing and speaking good copy as no different than prospecting and presenting. Just like we teach writing, chanting, and role-playing, the listing appointment or the buyer consult, which you're going to see a live buyer consultation for the first time ever from this stage. I look at writing and speaking good copy no different than that. And you're going to hear what I would consider like the modern day practice. You're going to hear that as we go on. That's number 6. Number 7. The skill of hitting 8% with our databases. The skill of hitting 8% with our databases. Jonathan, I just got a notification. I'm 6 minutes late to your team call. I'm sorry. Can you let them know that we got an event today? Okay. Why is my phone buzzing? 6 minutes late. He's probably like, yeah, that's about right. You're right on time then. The skill of hitting 8%. Okay. So many of you have been doing this for a while, for years and years. You may remember hearing about this golden rule of 10%. The database rule of 10%. That means 10% of the people in your database will refer you or do business with you annually. You've also heard over the last several years through Glover U, because we teach you what's happening now, 10% is not a number anymore. It's 8%. And I actually believe in 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, it might be more like 6 or 7%. Because the loyalty from those in our database to us is being tested more now than ever before because of all the options they have. They can go discount, they can go virtual, they can go this, they can go that. Oh, Jeff, I'm so sorry. We didn't want to bother you on a Sunday. The skill of hitting 8% with our databases. It's a skill. Now, the good news is I'm going to be sharing with you our database value proposition. How are we at 8%? Okay, we have a database of 6,000 people. We close 440 to 450 units. Do the math on that. It's about 8%. How are we at 8%? 450 just from our database. How are we doing that? I'm going to share that. You're going to hear that throughout the retreat this week. Skill number 8. The skill of hosting open house events. The skill of hosting open house events. And I want you to underline events. Because here's what I know about this NAR settlement. I don't care whether you consider yourself a listing agent, a buyer's agent. Those hosting open houses, without question, absolutely just got a raise. Why? Because more buyers are going to exhaust all options to find out about real estate, and more buyers are going to avoid the buyer's agent conversation thinking that they can save some money. Because, of course, once this actually does kick in, there's going to be a ton. You saw in the opening video, you can now negotiate commissions. The standard 6% is gone. The percentage of commissions charged is coming down. Buyers are going to hear that stuff again come August when it actually kicks in, and they're going to say, you know what, honey? Let's not mess with, I understand we may be able to negotiate concessions. Let's not mess with any of that. Let's just go right to the listing agent. Let's not mess around with the buyer's agent. Now, for those of you in the room that spend more time working with buyers than you do sellers, the good news is by the time we're done here on Thursday, you're going to walk out of here with everything you need to know and do to capture more buyers and get more business. Why? Because a lot of buyer's agents are going to go away. A lot of buyer's agents are not going to be able to figure out how to make it through this change, and it's actually going to put you in a position to have more buyers to work with. So I don't care what your opinion is on whether you work sellers or buyers. Here's what I know. The value of the open house just went up. And if an open house strategy is not part of your business plan in the second half of 2024 and into 2025, you're missing a huge opportunity. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I've never been a fan of open houses. I mean, seriously, I've never been a fan of showing houses to begin with. I mean, I could go without seeing another linen closet. Seriously, like, well, look, folks, a linen closet. I got an idea. Why don't we open it up and see what's inside? Oh, look, linens. Or my favorite, you walk in the house, the buyers. Oh my God, this place is a pigsty. We could never live here. The kitchen's on the wrong side. This is here. No way. But can we take a look upstairs? What? You just said you could never live here. Why would we look upstairs? Sure, go ahead. I'll follow you. Mm-hmm. I think my best year buyer sales was maybe 40 transactions. You can see why. But the skill of hosting open houses is not just for buyers, it's actually for sellers. Because, of course, we know a certain percentage of buyers have homes to sell, but I'm also trying to get a real deep relationship with people who live in the neighborhood. So when you think of an open house event, I don't want you to just think about, oh, he's talking about tents and signs and clowns and the wacky, wavy, inflatable, moving around here, hand guy. No. I'm talking about how do we take this open house and turn it into an opportunity to create deep relationships with other potential sellers in the neighborhood. Good news is you'll be hearing about open house strategies this week. All right, number 9. The skill of following up relentlessly. The skill of following up relentlessly versus quickly. The skill of following up relentlessly versus quickly. What do I mean by that? Well, this industry has been bogged down by people telling us, speed to lead, got to be the first one. And by the way, there is a lot of truth to that. I mean, there's plenty of studies that say the faster you respond, the greater chance you'll get a response. But here's what I know. For a fact, with 1,000% certainty, I want you to change your mindset around this. The person who follows up the most, not the fastest, the person who follows up the most is going to receive greater conversion. Now, by the way, I'm not suggesting that you start taking your time and following up. I mean, I would still follow up in 5, 7, 3, 2 minutes, 30 seconds, whatever it is. But the person that's following up 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times is the one who's going to get the result. And I know what you're thinking, Jeff, I've seen your little 3x3 formula and, 3 calls, 3 texts, 3 emails, all within 3 days. For those of you that are not familiar with it, 3 calls, 3 texts, 3 emails, all within 3 days. Oh my gosh, that's like 9 reach outs in 3 days. That's intense. Watch, let me tell you something. They're not keeping score, only you are. They're not keeping score of how many times you follow up. In fact, when you're following up for the 7th time, in their mind, if they're keeping even a little bit of score, they think it's like the 2nd or 3rd time you've reached out. When you reach out 7, 8, 9 times in a couple 3-day span, they're not saying, how dare this guy? He sent me 3 texts, This is his third email, and now his third call. They're not paying attention to that. Only you are, because you're keeping track. They're not keeping track of that. So Jeff, how is it that they're not going to be bothered then? How is it that they won't feel like I'm pestering them? Okay, show of hands if you receive more calls, texts, emails, notifications today than ever before. Raise your hand real high, real high, real high. Let me see you. Mostly from us, of course. Consumers today are inundated with calls, with texts, with Ring cameras going off. Oh, somebody's walking, pushing a stroller in the front, in the sidewalk, and your Ring camera's going off. Why do you have the settings set so sensitive? That's on you. Fix that. We're inundated with every single notification. Do you think they're really paying attention to the missed call, to the text message from someone they don't know? They probably didn't even open it. But you know when they do pay attention? At the time when they're thinking about it. Now, Jeff, how do I time it properly? You just have to follow up more than anyone else. You want to time it properly? You just follow up more than anybody. So what I want to push the industry, particularly our Glover U attendees, to think about and implement moving forward is this. The frequency of your follow-up is more important than your speed to lead. Speed to lead's not going anywhere. It's important, don't get me wrong. You know, that's why the Zillow Live Transfer and all that stuff works. But the frequency of the follow-up is where the best of the best are getting results right now. And that's skill number 9. Let's take a look at skill number 10. Skill number 10, needed to win in the new, I call it market, but really it's industry. The skill of treating the buyer process no different than the seller process. The skill of treating the buyer process no different than the seller process. The skill of treating the buyer process no different than the seller process. In your notes, I want you, you need about a half a page for this. So if you have a half page left, you're fine. Stay on that page. If you don't have a half page left, just turn to the next one. I want to show you what I mean by this one, because I think it will help you wrap your head around, because I know there's a lot of agents, they've reached out. The number one question I get is, Jeff, how are you going to have the conversation with the buyer about the potential of paying you? Anybody wondering how you're going to have that conversation? Say yes. So the good news is you're going to hear that conversation live from the stage, because I'll be having that conversation with a buyer, and it will be in front of everyone exactly on how to go from your buyer. How do I transition from my buyer consultation to helping them understand that they may have to pay me? Because let's be real clear, and I don't care what the stories say, I don't care what you've heard. Here's what I know. The buyers will be asked to pay some or all of our commissions in a lot of cases moving forward. All right, so I don't care if you think, well, what about concessions, Jeff? No, there's gonna be concessions. Fine. If you believe that, then you're living in la la land. Because when the last time the market was hot, really hot in 2022, honestly, just think about how many offers you got accepted with concessions. Most of you, 0. You think all of a sudden the sellers and the listing agents are going to say, you know what? We kind of feel bad for you. You've shown a lot of homes to these buyers, I'm sure. So we'd like to offer you 2.5% in concessions for your troubles. You really think the sellers and the listing agents are going to do that? Now watch. You're going to have plenty of listings that you show, which right in the MLS is offering out concessions. And of course, on this stage, I can't make a recommendation to what that number should be, but I will tell you that is our stance as an organization. We suggest you help sellers understand the value in offering out concessions. That's our stance on that. Every single listing appointment we go on, you're going to hear a live listing presentation from this stage. It's been 2 years since we've done one. We've updated it. Every single appointment we go on, we're going to help the seller understand the value in offering concessions to the buyer so they can pay their agent. But that's us. That's most of you in this room. But what about your competition? What about your competition that doesn't work on their sales skills? What about your competition that is part-time? What about your competition that are just doing it for friends and family? What about your competition that just got into the business? What about your competition that doesn't care what happens on the buy side? They only care what they make on the sell side. Every single one of you in every single one of your markets are going to deal with listings and seller agents that are not offering out concessions. So I need you to understand, since we know that that's going to happen, it may be a lot, it may be 20% of the time, it may be 30% of the time. Since we know what's going to happen, then we got to get good at understanding that our buyer process is no different than our seller process. And we have to wrap our heads around this idea that my buyers, after August 15th, 17th, 14th, whatever date it is, my buyers, in some cases, are going to have to write a check for my services. You 1,000% need to get on board with that, because it's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, you'll do all the deals you want, you just won't get paid on them. And that's, of course, no fun. So let me share with you what I mean by matching the seller and buyer process. So watch this, all right? We have seller lead gen. We have buyer lead gen. Sounds about right? We have, which means setting appointments. We have a seller pre-qualifying script. We now have a buyer pre-qual script, which you're going to learn. I'm going to teach you it at this retreat. We have a seller pre-appointment package. We now have a buyer pre-appointment package, which also will be covered at this event. We have a seller presentation. For a lot of you, you haven't had to do this over the last few years. We have a buyer presentation. We have a seller objection handling. We have buyer objection handling. We have a seller exclusive contract. We have a buyer exclusive contract. No different. Everything you do on the sell side, you're now going to be doing on the buy side. And of course, some of these pieces that you might need some help with, the buyer presentation, we're going to do that this week. Buyer objection handling, we're going to do that this week. How do we go from a buyer presentation to letting the buyer know that they might have to pay me? We're going to do that this week. Jeff, buyer pre-appointment package. I don't even have a buyer appointment package. We're going to do that this week. Buyer pre-qual, I barely seller pre-qual. What does that mean? We're going to cover that this week. So moving forward, I want you to wrap your head around this idea that the buyer process will really be no different than the seller process. And just like we ask sellers to pay us for our services, we're going to teach you how to ask buyers to pay you for your services. Now, the good news is there may be a lot of transactions that you get involved in that the buyer doesn't have to pay you anything. And you're going to see that in the script and as part of the presentation. But it's my job to prepare you for the worst. I had somebody say, well, Jeff, what happens if this whole thing goes away? Or like, we get into it and then everyone hates it and we go back. If you learn how to present to a buyer and you do such a good job that they work with you, even knowing that they're going to have to pay you, is that a skill that'll stay with you for the rest of your career? Yes, it will. So I don't care what, appeals and all this other stuff. If we get good at this, it's going to stick with you for the rest of your life. That's number 10. Number 11. The skill of handling new buyer objections. Oh yeah, there's new ones. The skill of handling new buyer objections. Get your hands on them. You're going to hear them here. Write them, chant them, role play them. That whole NAR script book that we put out 3 months ago, I guess now, our agents have been prepared for months. Agents in Glover U Coaching have been preparing months for this. They can't wait for this change to take place. I can't wait for this change to take place. Because I honestly believe the most skilled buyer's agents in the room are actually going to make more money. Honestly believe that. You know, I know there's a lot of buzz about how it's going to bring down commissions. No. I actually think the people in this room, we have an opportunity to make more money on the buy side. Well, why is that? Well, because many of you, like me, have maybe felt a little icky about asking a buyer to pay you the difference. Because it is a little icky. And for some of your markets, it's normal, so it might not feel that way for you. Actually, I was having a conversation. Sunshine asked me a couple days ago, have you actually ever made a buyer pay you the difference? I'm like, honestly, no. I can't think of a single time. Because it doesn't feel right. But when the industry creates a new way of doing business, it's not going to feel icky anymore. Because it's just the way business is done. And so for those of you that are still having trouble, because I had that same mentality. Heck no, I'm not going back to my buyers. Fine, I'll take 2 points instead of 3. Whatever the number is in the MLS, fine, I'll take it. I'm not asking them to pay the difference. It's not fair to them. We have to eliminate all those thoughts moving forward because it's the way business will be done. And to help you kind of understand that, of course, on the sell side, or at least to help you maybe be at peace with that, if you're still feeling like, cringe maybe when you hear me say that. Yes, and if you have sellers that are not willing to offer concessions to help the buyers pay their agents, well, then that's where they're going to save. That's where they're going to get it back. Don't feel like you're overcharging because you're not. You have a list of things you do, and you have a contract that states what you get paid. Regardless of what's being offered in concessions, you have a right to ask for the difference, and your contract says so. And it's going to be commonplace, so don't feel bad about it. We'll help you with that one as we go. And then the last one I'm going to give you before we break, which there are some unique instructions for lunch, so don't leave early for lunch. Number 12. The skill of getting the buyer to pay you. That's going to be a skill. The skill of getting the buyer to pay you. Most of you have never had to do that. You just heard me say that. I've never went back on any transaction and had the buyer pay me the difference. Never once. Because I just felt weird about it. Felt icky to me. Felt wrong. Right? The saying, the moment the commission check becomes more important than the client, you've lost. It completely goes against that. Yes, until it's a new industry way. Do you see the difference? So, I know this might be a tough one for us to swallow for some of us, but before I give the lunch instructions, can I get one piece of an agreement from you guys? First of all, say yes to that, please. Yes. Moving forward, we understand that in order to get paid what I'm worth, the buyer may have to cover the difference. Say yes. Let that sink in, because that's the new world we're going to be living in. The good news is, between now and Thursday at 12:30, I've got everything you need to help a buyer understand why they would want to. It's not going to feel like an obligation. See, that's the difference between a great salesperson and an average salesperson. An average salesperson says, here's what I do, and here's what it costs. A great salesperson helps the buyer understand, by actually paying me, you're going to be in a better financial position. May I explain? So let's look at 13. The skill of keeping our mindset strong during change and chaos. The skill of keeping our mindset strong during change and chaos. You guys, this is not going anywhere. This is always part of the plan. But you understand, come August, we're going to be forced to pay attention to so much noise and distractions and negativity. The greats are just going to say, I got this, and I'm going to keep going. Everyone else is going to wallow in all the conversations, and can you believe NAR said this, and CNBC said this, and whatever. No. No different than the advice I give you on keeping a strong mindset. Reading 1 or 2 pages out of a book every day. Having a different podcast for every single day of the week. Not reading all the threads in Facebook groups by all the negative people who comment back and forth. What does that do for you? How does that move your business forward? Do you know in the Glover U Inner Circle, when there's negativity, we just delete the whole thread. Get it out of there. No negativity. Which, by the way, that's going to take some skill in avoiding the noise. That's number 13. Number 14. The skill of communicating your value to consumers. And I'm going to talk about this one for a second. The skill of communicating your value to consumers. So here's the deal. I know a lot of you in here have great skills. You have great plans of actions. You have great listing plans of actions, buyer plans of actions, which, by the way, we give a lot of those away in our coaching and some of our breakout sessions. You'll see that in your workbook as well. But how good is honestly, how good is your value proposition if no one knows about it? I mean, I would almost argue your method of communicating and getting the word out about your value proposition is just as important as your actual value proposition. Otherwise, you're just wasting time putting together a strong value proposition. So when I think about communicating your value to consumers, there's really 2 or 3 things that come to mind. Number 1 is actually identifying what that value is. Honestly, when is the last time you actually wrote out what makes you different amongst your competitors? Honestly, what makes you different? Now, you don't have to answer it right now, but if you think about it, I bet you could come up with at least one answer. You could come up with 3 or 4. You've been asked on listing presentations, so what makes you different? Why should I hire you? And you've had to spit something out right away. So what would that answer be today? Because, by the way, your answer today might be different than it was 10 years ago when you were asked that all the time, or 5 years ago when you were asked that. Or maybe you are asked that a lot now. What is your answer today to that question? The skill of communicating your value. So what is your value? That's step 1. Step 2 is, how do you talk about your value? How do you talk about it? Do you talk about it on social media? Do you talk about it at networking events? Do you talk about it by prospecting? Do you talk about it by advertising? How do you communicate it? And the third thing I'd say under the skill of communicating your value to consumers, how do you get consumers to know they need it? How do you get consumers to know they need it, what you have? How do I get them to know that they need what I have? Pay close attention to some of the stuff that's going to be happening on stage this week. That'll answer that one for you. Ooh, number 15, big one today. The skill of getting your clients to talk about you. The skill of getting your clients to be vocal, to talk about the success that they had in working with you as a buyer's agent or as a seller's agent. How are you getting your clients to talk about you? What is your process for that? Do you have a process for that? You understand that if you just created a process for that, you would have your clients talking about you. But it would require writing out a plan, such as after every closing, we do this, this, and this. After every closing, I interview my client right there at the closing table when they're most happy. After every closing, I take out my phone and I record a conversation with them about their experience. I mean, I'm just spitballing a couple simple things you could do. But if it becomes part of your process, then every single time you have a closing, you have your clients talking about you. So what is your process for that? And then the last one I'll break on, because the next one is a long one, is number 16. Winning in the new market. the skill of working for sale by owners and expired listings. The skill of working for sale by owner and expired listings. Because here's what I know. All right, I'm going to put a little asterisk on it because, you could go back and say, see, I told you Jeff was wrong. We found a spot where he was wrong. We promote when I'm right. We don't usually promote when I'm wrong. The reason why I'm saying put an asterisk by this, about next to what I'm about to say, is because it is market dependent, what I'm about to say. But I also know the change in the industry is going to compete, the change in the industry is going to give us a different market. And so why would we need this skill of working expireds and for sale by owners? Because there's going to be more of them. That's right, Paul. There's going to be more of them. Connor, you live in Vermont. You're already starting to see more of them, aren't you? Finally. There's going to be more of them. Why would there be more for sale by owners and expires after the NAR settlement? Well, because watch this. If homes already didn't sell because of price and condition, now watch. Price and condition is a reason why a home doesn't sell. Can we all agree with that? Say yes. So if they already didn't sell because of price and condition, but those homes were all offering out a buyer broker commission. Well, now we have price. Watch this. You have a new listing that's priced kind of Condition is meh, not great. And now the seller is not willing to offer concessions to the buyer to help them pay their agent. That listing ain't selling. Before it would, because it's in the MLS, a commission's offered, you're protected, you know you're getting paid. Let's go see it. Who knows? Maybe they're motivated. We could get a good deal. And now, I don't know. Watch. Here's how the conversations sound. Jeff, what about this one over here? Well, I can show you that one. Let me just point a few things out. It's priced a little on the high side. By the way, did you get a chance to take a look at the photos? Yeah. The kitchen's a little dated, but that's okay. We can kind of make it our own. Well, there's one other factor you might want to consider. What's that? Well, they're not offering any concessions like the other listings we've seen are. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means you may have to chip in and pay a portion or all of my commission to help you secure that home. What would that be? 10, 11 grand could be? Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't show that great anyways. We'll just skip that one. Now you have a new listing that just expired. So again, this is market dependent because if the market gets hot and everything's selling no matter what, well then that goes out the window. But if if nothing really changes in our market, meaning if the market stays like it is today, when this NAR settlement kicks in, just give it about 30, 60 days after the NAR settlement kicks in, all of a sudden, and you can go back, somebody write this down. Yep, Jeff predicted it on July 15th. You can go back and see, whoa, we're used to having like 15 or 18 expires a day. We're getting 25, 30 right now. What do they all have in common? They weren't offering concessions. For sale by owners, on the other hand, they're going to have more confidence. So whether you like for sale by owners or not, because some people say, those knuckleheads, they're going to have more confidence. Not going to work that group. I love the idea that they're going to have more confidence because you know what that means? That means there's going to be more to work. Now, that means more objections to overcome. That means more appointments that have to be set. That means more opportunities to get porched, at the front door. You guys have been porched before, I'm sure. Yep. Porched, when you show up and they're not there. Porched. So you have an opportunity to get porched more often with a for sale by owner. But watch this, there's going to be more of them. Why would there be more for sale by owners? Well, because for those of you that have worked for sale by owners, and I've probably listed and sold over 1,000 in my career, what are one or two things that you hear from for sale by owners all the time on the phone? Well, if we list with someone, we're going to go with a discount broker because we just need to pay to put it in the MLS so we can show that we're offering out a commission to. Well, wait a second. They can't offer out a commission anymore through a discount broker. So you're thinking, well, this is a good thing for us as an industry, maybe, but this also means more for sale by owners are going to say, this is good. This just leveled the playing field. That's one less advantage we have as realtors compared to for sale by owner. Because they're going to say, well, we can't right now, if they're not listed with limited service brokerage or with a brokerage offering out a commission, they can't compete with our listings that are offering out a commission. But when the change comes and no one can offer out a commission, it's going to even the playing field for sale by owners, which is what it's going to do is it's going to give them more confidence. And in every market in the US and Canada, you're going to see more for sale by owner opportunities. So if there was ever a time to get good at a new source, I would pick one of those two. I'm telling you right now, I mean, I know for Glover Agency, we've always worked those two, but we are about to double and triple down on those two sources. Why? Because there's going to be more available. And so I know there's a lot of you that are skilled, tenured, long-time agents. Jeff, my database does well. I don't need another source. Okay, then let your competitors have that money. Then don't tell me you want to sell more homes, because that is easy money over there. They've already raised their hand and said, I want to sell. So who cares? Fight through some objections, set an appointment, go get kicked around a little bit and get a listing and get a commission check. It's worth it. But if there's anything that you walk away from, although we've covered a lot so far, and we're going to continue to get more tactical as the event goes on, pick one. It doesn't have to be both. Pick for sale by owners, pick expireds. And I'm not even suggesting that, even though the theme, as we started off, that you go all in. Now, I would go all in. That's what I would do. But I'm speaking to the person who's never worked them, okay? If you've never worked them, identify one a week that you're going to work. One a week that you're going to call, that you're going to text, you're going to email, that you're going to go to the... One a week. What is the harm in doing that? That's for the people that have never worked them. But if you've kind of dabbled in it a bit, and when you look back over the last 12 months and you say, yeah, I've had a handful of sales from expireds and for sale by owners this year, that group, which I know is probably 90% of our audience, if you've been coming to our events, we've been teaching for sale by owners and expired since day one, why are you not going all in on that source? What's holding you back? We went all in on that source and continue to. Why aren't you? Well, it's not really who I am. It's not my style. Okay, then my question is, can you hit your goals, your units, your income, your volume, whatever that goal is, working the current sources that you have? And if the answer is yes, then my follow-up question is going to be how? How are you going to go from 35 units to 60 units working your database in 1 year? Tell me how. Where's your plan? Let me see your plan. And if I believe you have a good plan, I'll say, you know what? Yeah, don't worry about expireds and for sale by owners. That's a good plan. You'll do 50, 60 units with that plan. But if you're not convinced yourself that you're going to be able to go from 30 to 60 or 60 to 100 or 75 to 125, whatever that number is, with your current sources of business, I'm giving you a gift. Get good at one of those two, expireds or for sale by owners. They're not going anywhere, and there's about to be more of them.